episode of Fueled by Crab. Just want to start off by saying again, appreciate you guys for watching, subscribing, and liking my videos. I got 3 college football topics that I want to talk about in today's video. Each topic interesting in their own way, but they all have different dynamics and they all pose a lot of great questions. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was Baylor quarterback Sawyer Robertson, and he's just not getting the credit he deserves, especially when it comes to being in like Heisman conversations. Now it is early in the season, it's only week 3. Once we get that first week or 2 out, we start to get these weekly updated polls of like a Heisman race and other awards, but the Heisman being the ultimate individual award. Each week we have kind of like a tracker and we keep track of players. So as of right now, we do have our updated top 10 list that I'll put right here. And there's some really impressive names on there. A lot of these guys do deserve to be on the list. But one thing that stood out to me was Baylor quarterback Sawyer Robertson not being on this list. Not being on this list at all. It's kind of like a joke, honestly. So far this year, he already has over 1,000 yards with 10 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. He opened up this year with an impressive performance against Auburn. They did lose, but he still managed to throw for 3 touchdowns. And he had over 400 yards. So he can't play both sides of the ball. He can't play defense. So he definitely did his thing. The goal is to win, which they didn't do, but he had a really good showing against Auburn. This game might be the reason why he's not top 10 in the Heisman candidates, because losing the first game isn't ideal, but losing the first game at home is something I think that they take account for. Now, it was against an SEC opponent in Auburn, and he did ball out, so I don't think it should hinder, where we rank him, but that's just how it goes. The following week, he put together another masterclass performance against SMU, who was the 17th best team in the nation. In a double overtime win on the road, he threw for 440 yards and 4 touchdowns, so he balled out in that game. It was a shootout of a game against SMU. He showed the ability to sit down and be calm in the pocket. He didn't let the pressure move him off his reads. He sat in the pocket. He threw good balls and ultimately got the win in an exciting double overtime victory over SMU. The crazy part about these, 400-yard games is he doesn't really use his legs. It's not like he's running out the pocket, extended plays, which I think makes him really unique. And it sounds crazy because 10 years ago, this was kind of the prototypical quarterback. Now I feel like being a dual threat quarterback and being able to run is more of like a necessity than it was just like a cherry on top back in the day. But he's just really surgical in the pocket, stays calm, stays in the pocket, makes the throws. He's got Baylor playing some really good football, and I think Sawyer deserves some recognition and respect. If he stays on pace and doing what he's doing in these next few weeks, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him on one of these updated lists here soon. Staying on the topic of quarterbacks, but moving on to a different situation, Colorado has seemed to name Caden as their starting quarterback again. This comes after he got benched after, some believe he had a slow start or just wasn't playing up to expectations. Transfer from Liberty last year, for those who don't know. The quarterback situation in Colorado is just really weird. I'm paraphrasing here, but Bill Parcells basically said having 2 quarterbacks is basically like having none. Just a lot of bad things that can come from having that. One being a split locker room. The quarterback is the clear leader on the team. So if you got 2 guys kind of battling to be the front runner of that leader or the alpha male of the team, I think it can really just cause division in the locker room, and some guys will just gravitate towards one quarterback while the other guys will just gravitate towards the other guy for whatever the case may be, whether it be personal reasons, play style, they just talk more off the field. A lot of things can play into that, but it's just something that you definitely don't want to have. And the first thing that comes to mind as an example of a 2 quarterback situation that kind of had the locker room divided was San Francisco in 2012. Now that was kind of a while back, but Coach Harbaugh did kind of have a lot on his hands. Half the locker room wanted to go with Alex Smith, the proven winner, I guess veteran at the time for what it is. And half the locker room wants to go with Kaepernick, the young, fresh, new guy. And they ended up going with Kaepernick and did make it to a Super Bowl. It just caused for a lot of friction, and it could just make it hard to focus on game day when you got the locker room divided. I feel like it could cause a serious challenge in game planning, especially for the offensive coordinator, whether coaches realize that or not. For example, here in Colorado, you got Staub versus Caden, 2 totally different quarterbacks. Caden being the more mobile, dual threat quarterback like I was talking about earlier. Versus Staub was more of like who can do it with his legs, I guess, but more of like a pocket passer. And he was with the team last year, so he does have credibility there. But with the different abilities of quarterbacks, certain plays you can call for this guy, certain plays you can call for this guy. And this might be a really good play, but once you switch quarterbacks, that can change the whole dynamic. And the last thing you want to do for a quarterback is kill their confidence. He had 1 game in a new system. He didn't turn the ball over, didn't throw any interception. Now, did he play his best? No. I'm not saying that Caden has played a perfect game, but I feel like benching him was pretty extreme and it can kill their confidence. Hopefully it doesn't kill his confidence and he takes this more of like a lesson to, hey, you know, nobody is above the program, and if you don't perform, you are subject to lose your job, which is a good idea to have overall as a coach. But realistically, one bad game or one game that didn't meet expectation, I don't feel like is a good enough reason to like implement that. Now, obviously, if he cost them the game, constantly turning the ball over, then it's a different conversation. But I don't know. I don't really get it. Honestly, that loss to Georgia Tech is seeming more and more respectable because Georgia Tech is showing to be a really good football team as they just beat Clemson. So I don't think that's a bad loss for Colorado. So yeah, it's just a lot of risk with benching your quarterback early and having two quarterbacks. It is still really early in the season, so I like how they're going back to Caden. And honestly, I hope they just rock out with him at least for a few more games so he can prove that he is the starting quarterback for this team. Uncertainty does lead to failure, so hopefully, you know, they're rocking with Caden. They know what they got in their quarterback room now. They can rock with him and gain some stability, some confidence, and put together some wins. Before I move on, I would like to say again, Colorado has to show that they can run the ball, as I feel like that'll only just make the game easier for Caden. That way you can start getting to RPOs, play actions, and things like that. But if you can't sell the run and teams know you're passing, you don't have the greatest wide receivers out there, and you don't just have the most precise, you know, down throwing quarterback either. So having a good run game can definitely hide some of those flaws, if that's what you want to call them. So against Wyoming, I do expect Colorado to run the ball more and show that they can win the battle in the trenches, man. Jordan Seaton, they got to put together some wins, man. I would hate for Jordan Seaton to hit the portal. He has to play one more year of college football after this year, and I would hate to see him hit the portal. I would love to see him rock out with Prom, but they got to win games, bro. He's starting to look frustrated, and if they don't start to win games, I feel like that could just hurt recruiting, you know, because recruits coming seeing how short of a leash they have, you know, especially at the quarterback position. I feel like that could hinder a lot of guys from coming to Colorado, especially, you know, if you aren't putting together wins. Both quarterbacks, Staub and Slater, have put together 6 scoring drives with the offense this season. Interesting fact that I read up on is Staub has an average time of possession of like 2 minutes, while Caden has an average time of possession of like 4 minutes, so almost double that. With that defense not being good, not being able to stop guys, you'll want your offense to be on the field more. So if nothing else matters, I think logically Caden is the guy you want to go with at quarterback. So hopefully Colorado figures things out. I love seeing him on the good side of the media. I don't like seeing him on the bad side of the media. So hopefully they get things figured out, and I believe they can still win some ball games. Moving on, the last topic that I wanted to talk about, kind of on the topic of quarterback, but his head coach and former quarterback Michael Vick. Virginia Tech did just fire head coach Brent Perry with a $6 million buyout, which I think being a head coach in college football that's one of the best jobs to have. Could you imagine, like, you either do really good at your job and receive the fruits of your labor, or you do really bad, and if you sign a long-term contract, you get bought out. So you get money regardless. I know that's not a way to look at it, but, you know, to look on the bright side of things, essentially getting $6 million to get fired. So I'm pretty sure he's not upset about that. But with firing your head coach leaves the obvious question is who's the next guy up? And Michael Vick's name has been buzzing, obviously because Michael played there and he's a head coach now. A lot of people are saying like, hey, let's bring this guy in. Before Virginia Tech does that, they have to outweigh the pros and cons of making this type of hire. On one side, it is a lot of upside in hiring former players as coaches. It can definitely lead to like a surge and an uproar in recruiting, because a lot of these players and a lot of these recruits, I believe, need mentors who walk the walk. And what I mean by that is they need mentors who have been in their position before, who can kind of lead them down the right path. A lot of these guys don't take guidance or mentorship well from people who aren't in their position. Somebody who's never been rich is telling the rich person how to spend their money. It's one of those things where, how can you tell me how to do something that you've never done before? Now, I'm not saying that's the right or wrong way how to think, but that's just how these guys are thinking. So having somebody who's walked the walk, a mentor who's been there before, I think is definitely a green flag when hiring a head coach. And Michael Vick has done it. He's been the guy on campus. He's been the star on the team for that exact team. So he understands traditions, rivalry, values. He understands all those things on top of being the guy. So, you know, a lot of players can gravitate towards that, and I think it can really help vamp up their recruiting. Juwan Howard is a perfect example of that when he got hired as head coach of Michigan. Obviously, he was part of that Fab 5 team. and he had success in the NBA. So he's clearly one of the more successful players to come out of Michigan. A lot of these players buy into vision. So if you can sell them a vision or at least paint the picture for them, I think that'll really help with recruiting. But on the other flip side of that, Michael Vick is a very green head coach. He's his first year at Norfolk State. A lot of bad things can come with hiring a green head coach. For example, man, college football is very complex. You got to deal with NIL, boosters, play calling, and recruiting, and that's not even everything. So if you factor in all those things, that can cause for head coaches to get overwhelmed, and getting overwhelmed early in the season is a recipe for disaster. Scott Frost is a perfect example of that out of Nebraska. You know, that was a hero hire, it was an emotional hire, and it made sense at the time. But over time, they just weren't winning, it didn't work, and he didn't stay there for long. So the excitement can turn into anger quick. I mean, for Scott Frost, it was just lack of experience of running a program of that magnitude. So if I'm Michael Vick, I'm staying in Norfolk State, I'm building up my coaching resume and putting together some wins there and showing these players that I know how to coach, getting some reps at play calling. Football is very situational, so it'll be situations that if he goes now, he didn't get to experience, such as like maybe a tough 2-minute drill, or no timeouts, 20 seconds on your own 40, you got to score a touchdown. Just different stipulations and situations like that. I feel like at Norfolk State for a few more years, he'll run into, and he'll become better at handling and managing those situations. Next year won't be too different from Virginia Tech. So I don't think it makes sense for him to go there now. They'll still be losing a lot of games next year, and then he'll just get the blame for a team that's already bad. So let them kind of rebuild, figure it out, raise money, and build your resume up. And here in the next 3 to 4 years when that head coaching job opens up again. And those are just 3 college football topics that I found really interesting. Give me your opinions on these topics in the comments. Appreciate you guys for liking, subscribing,